Khorne here, and today I have decided to compile all of my proposed changes to Total War Warhammer 3 in a single video. These are all the changes I could think of that I believe would make the game more fun, interactive, and overall more enjoyable. Most of these are fairly simple and are derived from already existing mechanics, but I believe they would improve the game much more than if you were to think of an elaborate solution that might not be so enjoyable. I will also link every video in the description if you want to hear my full reasoning for these changes. To start with, for Nurgle, or rather Kugat's faction, there are so many changes that the faction needs. Polishing and quality of life adjustments, along with a reworked or readjusted technology tree. Lowering the population surplus and favor cost for tier 3 settlements, as well as reducing favor cost for tier 4 and 5 settlements, as Nurgle's economy simply can't support the high cost of his buildings. All buildings should provide some form of garrison, not just infrastructure buildings, as Nurgle can't build garrison buildings and filling your settlements with just infrastructure buildings in order to be able to defend them isn't enjoyable. Unit recruit cost and upkeep reduction, or at the very least the ability to recruit units at full health, would also improve the faction's playability. Additionally, the plague mechanic could be simplified and made more impactful. Currently, it is very common for plagues to override one another on the campaign map, and you often lose plagues you want to have. Perhaps implementing 3 plagues that would combine on the campaign map without overriding each other, each offering different results, would be better. 1 plague for army buffs, 1 for settlement buffs, and 1 for economic benefits. So for the plague that boosts your armies, it would be something like the current AUG, where you get a bonus to casualty replenishment rate and a bonus to campaign movement, and the enemy armies would get minor attrition and loss of movement. The plague that boosts your settlements should give you public order and growth per settlement, and would give negative public order to the enemy and spread Nurgle corruption. And the economic plague should give you a chance of spawning an infrastructure building in the infected region, or spawning a low tier unit in your recruit pool when infecting your or enemy armies. Combining 2 plagues would boost their effectiveness by 50%, while combining all 3 would result in a 77% boost. The combination of army and settlement plagues could offer bonuses like reduced cycle time for basic military buildings, combat buffs, and lowering the enemy combat stats. Combining army and economic plagues could increase the chance of spawning high tier units, along with converting enemy units into your recruit pool with the mark of Nurgle for the cost of infections, making it similar to the ally recruit system while being lore friendly, and a chance of spawning military buildings in your settlements. Combining the settlement and economic plagues would provide chances for instant settlement level increase or decrease in enemy settlements. Finally, combining all 3 plagues would result in the Godpox, which would further amplify the described effects. Now for the ally recruit system, I really like how the new ally recruit system works. It gives you actual incentives to forge alliances with other races aside from your own. The fact you have more options and actively engage with your allies makes the system much more fun to engage with. However, it can really feel as if it is half-baked. I find myself having maxed out alliance points with no good way of spending them. While getting units from other factions is fun, most of the time it is not worth it, as you can't boost them in any way whatsoever, so you simply are better off recruiting units from your own faction. So a way to fix this would be so that you could spend alliance points to further upgrade the units you recruit from them, such as getting temporary buffs for them faction-wide, or have a permanent upgrade for a specific unit. There is a bug in the game at the moment, where if you borrow an ally's army with an immortal hero in it and get that hero wounded, it becomes a permanent part of your faction. So why not have a prompt after reaching 100 alliance points that offers you to recruit a hero type from your ally faction? Just like how Malice Darkblade has the right where he chooses a hero to recruit from Malekith. Aside from the whole military aspect of alliances, you could also be able to spend your alliance points on certain campaign bonuses that would be specific to the race you ally with. Upon reaching 100 points, you would receive an event offering bonuses to your faction. For example, if you had an alliance with the High Elves, you could choose to get higher income from trade or public order. An alliance with the Dark Elves would grant you bonuses to post-battle loot income, while an alliance with the Skaven could provide you with growth, and so on. For the Skaven, I really don't like the way they feel in Warhammer 3, as the food system was reworked in a way that I find it less enjoyable. So for the Skaven, what I would like to see is their settlements and armies not have food upkeep anymore, and I would like to see the restriction on you only being able to get a maximum of 20 food from battles lifted. Instead, I think settlements should cost food to upgrade, the same as how Chaos Dwarfs upgrade their settlements using raw materials. I think this would make food more plentiful, more interesting to manage, allow you to field more armies, and play the Skaven as an actual Vermintide, and not just a faction that relies on high tier armies. I would also like to see the Skaven slaves get their dirt cheap upkeep back, as at the moment there is no reason to recruit them when clan rats do a much better job. For the Ogres, I would make changes to their campaign mechanics and the way they play. I would first of all remake the contracts list, make it so that you do not get mission offers, but rather offers for alliances. Every 10 to 20 turns, you would get an offer to make an alliance with a faction that would pay you a certain amount of income per turn based on the number of ogre camps you have. When you accept the contract, you go to war with every enemy the faction had, and the faction in question would start declaring war more often. You would then get regular missions that would give you more income but have a time limit attached to them. So if you fail to complete it in the given time, you would get reliability penalties and future contracts would offer less for your services. The income you receive will also be boosted by a base amount as well as a percentage by your camps. Camps should be able to be moved just like how Black Arcs can, albeit with much more reduced movement, and they shouldn't be able to make attacks. You shouldn't be forced to empire build. Instead, you should only be able to grow territory in the Ogre homeland, and every other territory should be just like how the Warriors of Chaos and Wood Elves occupy settlements as tier 1. Most of your income should come from accepting contracts, doing their requests, and any territory you sell to them should be at increased cost. So the way you would play the campaign would be to build up as many ogre camps as you can and increase your treasury as much as you can. Warriors of Chaos already play in a similar manner, so I don't think that what I suggested is too far from being feasible. Who knows, later down the track, you might find another faction is willing to offer you more for your services, so you would end up betraying a previous ally. The campaign would be, in my opinion, much more interesting than just another empire builder with extra steps. Traits, technologies, big names, and skills also need a lot of looking into, as in their current iteration, they are just way too underwhelming. Victory rewards were a very big missed opportunity, in my opinion. Instead of the generic one-size-fits-all approach they have taken with it, I think it should have been more specialized and genuinely game-changing. For instance, instead of granting 2 global recruit slots, Srot could gain the ability to augment ally units. Skrolk could gain a more potent version of the Skaven Plague. The Monogod's unique mechanics for Winds of Magic reserves could be amplified rather than overlooked. Short campaign victory reward for Slanesh could give you the ability to permanently seduce units, or for Nurgle to take control of infected enemy armies with a cost in terms of infections. More unique items such as the Chainsword and the Chaos Dwarf items could be added. Races with limited hero recruit potential, such as Wood Elves and Warriors of Chaos, could acquire a long campaign victory reward that doubles their hero capacity. Bonuses could be shifted around, so that bonus casualty replenishment rate could be given to races that actually need it, like the Dwarfs and Bretonnia. More army capacity for the Tomb Kings and the Beastmen. Or even have the long campaign victory enable Tomb Kings and Vampire Coast to confederate. I think this would give you a genuine desire to achieve victory and continue playing your campaigns well after the point you would usually have stopped playing. For the Dawi, first off, I would very much like it if they were to fix the dwarf economy, as at the moment they have one of the worst implemented economies in the game. Their economy buildings need to be better optimized for tier 3 buildings, as dwarves get the same income for their tier 4 buildings as other races do for their tier 3 buildings. which infuriates me so much whenever I play the Dwarves. I just want to never stop writing CA into the book. I would honestly like it if their campaign becomes more focused on dwarven holds, similar to how Wood Elves are focused on their, well, woods. I think the Dwarves should get their supply limits removed and instead get army limits that are based on the number of holds you have. I think this is more fitting of the dying race vibe, so having less but more powerful armies would be better. Capturing each new hold should feel unique and rewarding, and making it a priority over capturing any random settlement. The holds should all get a landmark that would have to be built in multiple tiers. Say you captured Karakadrin. The first tier landmark would be built at tier 3, where you would get a +1 army capacity and +2 melee attack for all armies. And at tier 5 you would get +2 army limits and +5 melee attack. Or this could also be like an Undercity or Sanctuary mechanic. Similar to the Wood Elves, I think you should have missions to cleanse the Underway in some way, like maybe fighting a massive Underway battle. Once you have cleansed your Underway, enemy armies would be unable to jump over into your province using the World Route or Underway stances. Also similar to the Wood Elves, I think you should be able to travel from hold to hold using the Underway after you cleansed it, but make it have a travel time duration so it is more similar to sea lanes. Oathgold feels somewhat uninteresting as it stands. Currently, it's only useful for obtaining items, but Dwarf Lords and Heroes feel quite generic. Similar to the Chaos Dwarfs, an economy based around Oathgold income could be introduced, including special buildings and resources. The option for forging items could be removed, but the option for forging runes could be expanded upon. Oathgold could also be used to build landmarks and buff units. A hybrid between the Flesh Laboratory and the manufactory could be introduced, providing more interesting choices. You'd have to choose between mutually exclusive stat upgrades, such as melee attack or melee defense, magic attack or removing magic attack, speed and armor, and etc. This would allow you to further enhance your preferred playstyle, whether you prefer a defensive army focusing on artillery or an offensive one focusing on melee engagements, similar to the Chaos Dwarfs. For the Vampire Coast, I honestly believe they should be more like the Warriors of Chaos. There should be a mechanic similar to the Black Fortresses, but for coastal settlements, which should all be fairly defensible and have a thriving economy. You shouldn't have supply lines, allowing you to field more armies. You should also, like the Warriors of Chaos, be able to occupy other settlements only at tier 1, where resources would provide global bonuses. Pirate coves are somewhat uninteresting, and the fact that you have to let your enemy keep their settlements is rather unappealing, to say the very least. Skaven undercities are not an essential mechanic and are often overlooked, but pirate coves are essential, and their current implementation is quite unenjoyable for me. I would much prefer it if your hero's capacity was upgraded normally through settlement buildings or even using infamy, similar to how the Beastmen or Tomb Kings can increase their hero capacity. Instead, pirate coves could function similarly to the Changeling cults, serving as a recruitment hub for your units. They should also have an option to stop the AI from recruiting lords and units in that region. Rather than having randomly generated loot maps across the map, perhaps there could be points of interest right at the beginning of a campaign, similar to how Norsca has unique technologies based on which race's capital they occupy. However, in this case you just have to sack the settlement or something similar. For the Dark Elves, my thoughts on how to fix them are probably not something most people would find appealing, as I would like to see some more mechanics added to their slave system. I wouldn't have slaves decrease public order faction-wide, as it can be too much to handle on higher difficulties. Instead, I would remove the supply lines from the Dark Elves and have high slave numbers increase the cost of maintaining your Dark Elf units. This, in my opinion, would simulate having difficulties with restraining slaves better. I would also give the Dark Elves unit caps, which would be something in between the Tomb Kings and the Chaos Dwarfs, as they would be tied to their black arcs. What I would do is import Rakat's campaign mechanic to all Dark Elves, but instead of getting war beasts when raiding, sacking and occupying, they would get units of the race they are attacking. So sacking an Empire settlement would get you spearmen, archers and so on. These units would be placed in your recruit pool and would cost slaves to recruit and maintain. These slave units you will be able to recruit would have the same sort of interaction as Chaos Dwarfs and Hobgoblins have with Malign Authority, or the way Dryker's Elven units get the Glamour trait, which reduces their combat stats and gives them the Expendable trait. Aside from using slaves to have slave units, I think Black Arcs could also be updated so that you could recruit more of them and would have to spend slaves to grow them. Growing Black Arcs would then increase your unit capacity. So a tier 2 Black Arc, you would get +1 unit capacity for your Dark Elf units. A tier 3 one would give you +2, and so on. I would also like to see the resource buildings reworked similarly to how the Chaos Dwarfs function, where your resource buildings would cost slaves to upkeep and would provide a bigger income or bonus. For Khorne, or rather for Skarbrand's campaign, even though I enjoy playing it more than any other faction, I still think there is room for improvement. There are too few ways of spending skulls, and you simply accumulate too many skulls over the course of your campaign, which can make it feel like a useless resource. One way of handling this, in my view, would be to allow spending skulls to upgrade units, similar to how the greenskins can. Another thing is that reaching the highest bloodletting with your blood host can feel a bit underwhelming, so a way this could be changed might be to gain unique units for this, or even an exalted bloodthirster as a reward. Even though it isn't necessary, it would make the mechanic more enjoyable. Finally, what irks me but isn't a big issue is the fact that demon princes of Khorne are, in comparison to the demon princes of the other chaos gods, quite weak. I would really like to see them gain some massive buffs for their skills, such as an ability that acts just like the chainsword while also increasing the splash stack, gaining a secondary melee skill line, and so on, just to make them more impactful and give you a reason to get them and not just exalted bloodthirsters. I would also talk about how I would make the endgame crisis better, but I think I talked about that enough already, so I will just link it in the description. Well, these are all the changes I could think of thus far, aside from some minor ones. If you enjoyed the video, I am some 100 subscribers away from becoming monetized, so if you could subscribe for future content, it would greatly help me out. If you have opinions on your own and would like to share them, please do so in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.
Khorne's horde fights as one.